So what do you do if your cast iron starts to peel? Howdy, I'm Jed. This is Cook Culture. So keeping your seasoning rock hard on your cast iron is really important for protecting the iron, making sure that it doesn't rust, but also creating a nice slick surface so it can be non-stick. But what will happen often is that over a certain time, your seasoning will degrade, and then it can blister and it can peel, just like on this pan here. So what does that mean? So when you've used a pan over a certain amount of time and use higher heat and the pan can become dry for whatever reason, the seasoning can dry out. And when it dries, it'll restrict, it'll come off of the surface and it will flake off. So you can go on for years and decades without flaking or peeling if you've got quite a lot of fat in the pan and you keep it really, really moist, and that can happen. So you can actually go along and never have peeling, but it happens a lot to a lot of pans that for whatever reason, they've been just cooked at too high of a heat, not enough moisture, whichever combination of however it goes, peeling will happen. So it's somewhat kind of hard to avoid it in certain pans. So this pan here is my own pan. I use this pan for a lot of dry cooking. So I'll cook tortillas on this, I'll cook pancakes on this, and I find that because I'm not using a lot of fat on this, and sometimes especially with things like cooking tortillas, I'll be at a higher heat, and because I'm kind of flash cooking them, and that has degraded the surface on my own pan. I've got other pans in which I use every single day that are nowhere close to having the same sort of problems as this one pan because I'm harsher to this pan. I'm abusive to this pan, you know, in a typical way of caring for your nonstick seasoned coating. I can get nonstick results out of this pan, but I find that a lot of time, you know, I'm focusing on, you know, fast cooking and flash cooking and not so much nonstick. Not that saying I don't want my tortillas to stick, but they don't because of the type of material they are and the way I'm cooking them. I maybe put a tiny bit of oil on them, but mostly the pan is pretty dry when I'm cooking something like a tortilla. I'll put a little bit of fat on them if I'm cooking pancakes, but not a lot. And I find that just the right heat with the cast iron works. So this pan here has had a decent amount of use, maybe 2 or 3 years of use. I've got quite a lot of carbon buildup on this pan where I don't on a lot of my other pans that I use my chainmail on all the time and I really work on. This one I've worked, you know, decently hard, but not that hard to keep it clean. So the carbon has really built up in the corners. And now it's come to a point that the seasoning, the original factory seasoning that came, this is a number 9 field griddle pan, the original factory seasoning has now degraded and it's starting to peel, and the buildup, a little bit of carbon buildup on top is peeling with it. So what I really need to do with this pan is give it a full work down. I need to either soak it in lye or bake it in the oven or do something, whatever, you know, method I would use to strip this right clean. But I'm not going to do that right now. Like, I will get at that project because it's a little bit of a project at some point in time when I have the time, and maybe I'll do a couple other pans at the same time. What I want to do today is I want to patch this. I want to like put a Band-Aid on it. I want to stop it from kind of degrading that area. So we're going to work away at this with a bit of chainmail, and then we're going to re-season that area and see if we can kind of build something back on that. So we're going to move over to the sink, and we're going to now work away at this area and take the flaking seasoning off and see if we can kind of get to something that's a little bit stickier, a little bit better, and then make a larger patch, open bare patch, and then work back with some seasoning on top of that. Okay, so I've got my chainmail. I've got a 3mm round chainmail. I've also got a silicone insert on a 10mm round chainmail. And what I'm gonna do is just go into this area, as simple as that, with my fine one, just get some of the edges off, and then use this guy that I can really get my elbow into and really work that edge. You could also heat this pan up a bit to soften this a tiny bit. What I wouldn't do here is use something like a metal brush. I find the roundness of the chainmail is really delicate in an aggressive way, if that makes sense. Using something like a wire brush or even, you know, just a regular stainless steel cleaning cloth that you get from like the grocery store can be a bit abusive or abrasive to the cast iron underneath, and that's gonna just leave some texture. So I am working to get this edge just kind of smoothed out and just trying to see if it's gonna stop it from peeling a little bit. So I'm putting quite a lot of effort into that in there. And there's a lot of buildup in here, in the corners. So I've got a lot of buildup in around this entire edge. So, you know, it really needs to be taken right down. But what I've got now is that's smoother. I've taken a bunch. That's where there was more peeling that was happening here. This is now pretty thick in there, but I've taken that all off. You know, like I said, I'm a little anal retentive. I'd love to just do the whole thing, but this can be a quick patch for now. And then at a different time, I would do this entire thing. I've got a video of cleaning, totally reconditioning a pan with lye that I'll link to. And that's the process that I will do when I get around to doing this pan. But right now we're gonna get back over to the stovetop and put some seasoning on there. Okay, so I'm preheating the pan. I'm gonna use the COOKWARE beeswax seasoning paste for cast iron. You can use grapeseed oil, bit of canola oil, any sort of unsaturated fat will work really, really well. So I am going to preheat my cloth just a tiny bit. And it's already got some wax on it. So I'm gonna just get a bit of the wax like shoe polish and just get it over that area. I'll do everything on there too. Like I said, I don't love that I've got, like it's quite a rigid edge along there now of where that seasoning is peeled off, but I'm just gonna get that guy on there and heat that up just like you would post-season any other time, but I've got that bare metal. And I'm going to do that guy just like so and leave it on the heat now. It's just starting to get a little bit of a smoke off the edge, just a tiny bit. I'm just gonna leave it for a couple more minutes, then I'm gonna turn it off, let that fully cool, and then I'm going to do it 2 more times and build kind of 3 seasonings with the paste on top of that, and then that'll be enough of a patch that'll get me for, you know, weeks, couple of months, whatever, until I get to the point where I make the time to do this properly. So that's that. Okay, so that was super fast, super easy, shouldn't take a lot of time. You just wanna make sure that you get the peeling seasoning off and just make sure that it's as smooth as you possibly can so that you kind of can't pick anymore with your fingernails. I don't love to say when you're using cast iron, carbon steel, that you have to have this tool or that tool, but I do find that using chainmail, this is a very fine chainmail, this is a very coarse chainmail. I find that chainmail is just a brilliant tool for doing this kind of work. It's just so fast, so easy. You can put so much effort into it, like pressure into it, to really make sure you get any of that flaking off without damaging the surface. You're not making deep scores. There might be a little bit of a patina when you're done, but you're not scoring into the iron, which is really nice for preserving that iron for generations to come. So, you know, kind of critical tools for doing that little patch job. But if you're gonna do a lye bath, or you're gonna bake it in the oven and self-clean, or however you're gonna just strip it totally down, you're not gonna need to use a tool like this. So if that's a method you decide, then great. But that does take, you know, a lot more time than what we're doing here. This is a quick patch. It's going to work really well. I could even leave it for maybe for another year or 2. But it is something that I do wanna get on sooner than later. So I hope that works. I hope that helps. Please, any questions or comments, throw them below. Thanks so much.